Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 4 player game Return to Dark Tower, designed by Isaac Childress, Noah Cohen, Rob Davio, Justin D. Jacobson, and Brian Neff, and published by Restoration Games, who helped sponsor this video. An old abandoned tower that was once home to an evil sorcerer has been reclaimed by a new adversary. Strange sounds can be heard coming from it, calling to creatures who now attack the surrounding lands. It's time for you and the other heroes of the Four Kingdoms to unite and stand against this imposing fortress. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, place the game board in the center of the play area. And this is divided into 4 kingdoms separated by rivers and labeled as the North, East, South, and West kingdoms. And each player should sit with one of the kingdoms directly in front of them. In the center of the board, you now set the imposing Dark Tower. From a previous game, you might have removed a few of these seals from the tower, and if so, add them all back with their skulls face up. But don't worry, they won't fit in upside down anyway. On the board, find the spaces labeled as citadels, bazaars, sanctuaries, and villages. And on each, place the matching shaped buildings. And you'll find there's one of each type located in each of the 4 kingdoms. And you still set up the entire board, even if you have fewer than 4 players. Nearby, set the 2 denominations of warrior and spirit tokens, along with 24 skulls. Spare skulls are included in case you lose any, but these you can return to the box for now. I have my tokens set in some trays that I have, and if you'd like to get some of your own, you'll find links in the description. Find the gear cards, which have this back, and sort them into face-up piles of matching items. You'll have 6 stacks of 3 cards each. The treasure cards have this back, and you shuffle them into a face-down pile, dealing 3 of them face-up into what is known as the market. These are the potion and corruption decks, and they should also be shuffled into face-down piles. The cards that look like this are known as companions, and you set them out as well, along with these 3 quest markers and this Haggle Die. Each person now picks one of the 4 included heroes to play as, and takes the related hero board. Or you can assign these randomly. We'll set up a 2-player game in this video and return these unused player boards back to the box. At this time, you can also pick someone to be what is known as the first player. The kingdom that's facing your side of the table becomes your home kingdom. So if the Orphans Scions player was sitting on this side of the table, the West Kingdom would be their home kingdom. Each player now collects the 3 double-sided virtue tiles that match the color of their board, setting them with their faded sides face up into these spaces. Then in the empty remaining virtue space, find and place the gold-edged kingdom virtue tile that matches the name of your kingdom. Then collect 7 warriors and 1 spirit token from the supply as your starting resources, as you're reminded of right here. Your hero will have a model to represent it and a matching colored base, and you set it onto the space of your home kingdom that contains your citadel. This tower is very impressive and a little intimidating, so I'm just going to set it to the side so it's not competing with me for your attention when we're in these shots. Alright, so now you need to get out an Android or iOS device that has Bluetooth capability, like a phone or tablet, and install the free Return to Dark Tower app. I have an early version of the app, so while the version you have will be similar, there may be a few differences, but nothing that should keep you from being able to follow along. Launch the app, and then, after it loads, you'll tap Start a New Game. Then it will ask you to turn the tower on, and to do this, you flip the tower over and ensure that you've installed the 3 required AA batteries that are sold separately, and then you turn the tower on by flicking this switch. It'll light up and you'll hear some sounds. Now I should mention, the tower is a very sturdy piece of equipment, but it has a lot of important technology inside of it, so treat it with care and it will last you a long, long time. With the tower turned on, now tap Next in the app. It's going to start to scan and it'll try to connect to the tower. Once it does, you'll then be able to tap Calibrate. Now the tower is really going to come to life. You're going to hear some whirring, some beeps, some other sounds. Something's going on in there. Basically, it's getting the tower set up, connected to the app, and ready to play. Eventually, you'll hear that imposing sound, and now you know that the tower is ready. And once it's calibrated, you can then tap Continue. You now pick whether you want to play a cooperative or competitive game, and we'll choose the standard cooperative mode. If you want a greater challenge, you can select gritty difficulty. And if you have the Alliance's expansion for the game and want to include that, tap its box. We'll ignore those options though and just tap continue. Now we indicate how many players we have. 2 in this case, tap and continue. The game comes with a variety of different challenges players can face, and here you cycle through and pick the one that you want, or have the app pick randomly. For your first game, they recommend Recover Asgole's Treasures, so we'll select that. Each time you play, you also get to pick an adversary to face from the many that are included. For your first game, they recommend Ashstrider. Finally, the kingdom will be overrun by a variety of foes, and you get to pick from a variety of different combinations of them. First, pick any one of these level 2 foes. We'll pick the brigands. Then tap on the card here for the level 3 foes, and pick one of those as well. We'll take the Widowmaid Spiders. Then tap the level 4 box here and pick one of these. We'll go with the dragon. Next, tap continue where it shows us a summary of our choices. Now find the companion card with a picture matching your main goal and the adversary card and token matching the one you chose, along with the cards and tokens matching your chosen foes. And all of these items you can set nearby for use later. There are several other cards and tokens that come with the game, but they'll only be used in certain situations, so you can just leave them in the box and pull them out as necessary. With our goal, adversary, and foes selected, we tap continue, and after a quick loading screen, we'll get a few more instructions. Here it tells us to place 2 skulls on each sanctuary and bazaar building. Again, as we can see, these are labeled on the board. So we set 2 skulls into each of those buildings as instructed, even in kingdoms that don't have players assigned to them. And when we're done, we tap continue. We're now told to collect these 4 River of Fire tokens from the box and set them nearby. As we continue, we're then told that the person we chose earlier as the first player should collect this Zeta companion. We're also told to add some foes to the board, and the app will show you which kingdom to place them in and then highlight the space and tell you that space's name at the bottom. You then find that foe's token and add it to that space. As you click next, you'll be instructed to add additional foes to the indicated spaces. So keep doing this one at a time until you've placed all of the foes the app requires. Once done, if we tap continue now, we'll be given a bit of story explaining the situation we find ourselves in and the goal we need to accomplish to win. This is telling us that we have to find the 4 treasure cards that have the word Asgole in their title and obtain 5 virtues. Once we have those requirements, we then need to go to the Upper Icefangs location of the board and perform a quest. We now place this main goal marker into that labeled space of the board to remind us where we have to go to complete the main quest. We'll learn more about this important objective later, but now we tap continue, and here we're told it's the first month of our adventure. And tapping continue again means the game is ready to begin. And that's the setup. In Return to Dark Tower, you and the other players will be working together to fight monsters, gain powers, survive the threats of the tower, and achieve your objectives. If you complete the main goal, the adversary will leave the tower to face you, and if you defeat the adversary, you all win. The game is played over a series of rounds known as months, and you must defeat the adversary before the end of the 6th month, or you all lose. In the very first month of the game, starting with the first player and going clockwise around the table 1 time, each player will take a single turn. The app will then inform you that that month is over and a new one will begin. In future months, the next person in clockwise order from the person who went last will go first in the new month. And then you take turns in clockwise order until the app stops you. In other words, in the first month, everyone takes exactly 1 turn, but in later months, you won't know how many turns you'll get until the month ends. The app will tell you when it's over. But this chart found in the rulebook will show you the average number of turns you'll get based on the number of players. So in a 2-player game, you'll get around 7 turns per month. Also, at the start of every month, except for the very first one, the app will give you 2 monthly quests. So let's skip ahead in the app to the 2nd month to show you what that will look like. As we confirm we're ready to start month 2, the app will tell us that some new quests are waiting. Tapping continue reveals a companion quest, and we can read this area out loud describing what is happening. Then we're told what task we've been asked to complete. In this case, we have to spend 16 warriors while in the muted forest, and we place this companion quest marker into that space of the board as a reminder. And again, the app will show us where on the board we'll find that space. With the companion quest established, we can tap continue, and here we're given an adversary quest. This will also describe a situation and task that you need to complete. This time, questing in the dayside space. So we can then place this adversary quest marker into that space as a reminder. With the two quests set up, you can then hit continue, and the players will be able to start taking turns. Completing quests as you play is optional, but often very helpful. If you finish the companion quest, you'll likely gain a new companion or helpful item, while completing the adversary quest usually prevents something terrible from happening. Sometimes a quest will provide you with a special item from what is known as the quest deck, which we left in the box during the setup. If so, you go through these cards to find the related item or items. These will provide you with various benefits, and if you ever spend or have to lose a quest item, just return it back to the box. You'll have until the end of the month to complete the quests you've been given, and if you succeed or fail to, the app will explain what happens at that time. And then you'll gain 2 new quests for the next month. Now, remember, for the very first month of the game, you won't be given those 2 quests. Instead, you'll just begin that month with the first player taking their turn. And a player's turn is broken into 3 parts: the start, the middle, and the end. You'll find reminders of what you can do during these stages of your turn in this area of your player board. And during the start of a turn, you can take the banner action listed here. This is optional. You don't have to perform your banner action, but if you don't, you won't be able to perform it later in your turn. And in this case, we're shown the symbol for a spirit token. So this means we collect one of them from the supply. Other game effects may come into play that say they resolve at the start of your turn, and if so, you would resolve those right now as well. After the start of your turn, you go to the middle of your turn, shown in this area of your board, and here you can move, perform one of the 3 possible heroic actions in this area, and perform one of the 4 possible reinforce actions listed here. And all of those are optional, and you can do them in any order, and even split up your move to take actions before, during, or after it. So you might, for example, do a reinforce action, then move 2 spaces, perform a heroic action, and then move some more. So let's start by learning how movement works. Here you can move a number of spaces up to your move value as shown here. So in the case of the orphaned scion, we can move up to 3 spaces. But notice it says you can spend 1 spirit token, returning it to the supply, to double your movement this turn. However, you must pay that cost before you perform any movement this turn. Some effects on other cards that we'll learn about later, like this one, may modify your movement, and if so, you apply all modifiers before any doubling. If you've already started moving and then gain something that would affect your movement value, it won't apply until your next turn. Each point of movement takes you from the space you are in into an adjacent space, which is any space sharing any amount of gold land border or these thick blue river borders. So for example, I could move 3 spaces going from here to here and then to here and maybe over to here. And nothing on the board stops your movement. You can always move through foes, other heroes, skulls, markers, or anything. You'll also notice that each space has a name and also represents a type of terrain based on its color and the symbol found in it. You'll find the terrain types listed in the rulebook and here on screen, and they can be important when resolving effects, as we'll see later. But that covers movement. So now let's talk about heroic actions. There are 3 to choose from, and again, you'll find these listed on your hero board, and you can perform any one of them. So let's go through each of these, starting with Cleanse. We'll see how skulls end up on the board later, but they're bad. And when you take the Cleanse action, you return all of the skulls from a building in your space back to the supply. And unless an ability says otherwise, you can't cleanse in a space with no skulls. With that understood, let's quickly look at virtues. These are found on your hero board in this area, and you start the game with 3 active virtues, and then 3 others you can unlock later, as we'll see. Whenever an active virtue would apply, you resolve its effect. For example, this one says that after you perform a cleanse action, you may then remove 1 skull from any other building anywhere on the board. So be sure to keep an eye on your hero's virtues as they will give you advantages while playing. And that's the cleanse action. But now let's take a look at a different heroic action, battling. This allows you to fight a single foe in your space. So if there's more than one, declare which one is your target. Now open the battle screen by tapping this icon. You'll now see all the possible foes in your game with their status listed below, which indicates how dangerous they currently are. The longer foes are on the board, the more dangerous they'll become. Next, select the foe you're battling, in this case, the brigands. Then tap Battle. You'll now be shown a display of the cards that make up the brigand's digital deck, spread out randomly, face down. You'll be facing a number of those cards equal to the level of that foe. This is printed on their card here, so this means we'll face 2 of their cards. But we pick which ones by tapping on them in the app, so I'll pick 2 of them now. The app will then reveal each of the cards I selected one at a time, and then I have to resolve them. For example, this one says to lose 2 warriors for each skull on buildings on or adjacent to my space. I'm adjacent to 2 skulls, so I'd lose 4 warriors, which means I return that many from the ones that I have back to the supply. Many battle effects will require spending warriors, and we'll see how you can gain more of these later. If you can't fully resolve the requirement, let's say, for example, I didn't have enough warriors, then complete as much as you can and gain a single corruption card. This is taken from the top of the corruption deck and added face up to your player board in this area. A corruption's effect is active immediately and will weaken your hero in some way. You only gain, at most, 1 corruption from any one effect, no matter how much of the effect you failed to complete. So if a single battle card wanted me to lose, for example, 12 warriors and 1 treasure, and I couldn't fulfill both of those requirements, I still only take 1 corruption. If I failed to complete a future battle card, I would then gain a 2nd corruption. And if a player would ever have 3 corruption at once, all the players lose immediately. When you lose the game while playing, tap this Game Lost icon here to quit in defeat. Now keep in mind, even if you fail to fully resolve the requirements of a foe's card and have to collect a corruption, you've not lost the battle. Whether you completed the requirements of the card or not, you then tap Confirm and the next card will be revealed, and then you can attempt to resolve its requirements. If you can, just do what it says and tap Confirm to move on. But if you can't, remember, you just resolve as much as you can and then take a corruption. For example, in this case, I'm now told to lose a potion. Well, I don't have a potion, so it looks like I'm going to have to take another corruption. But listen, you're not completely at the mercy of the enemy. You are a hero, after all, and can fight back using what are known as advantages. There are 6 different advantages you may have access to, as we see here: Beast, Magic, Humanoid, Melee, Undead, and Stealth. You may also have wild advantages, which can count as any one of the other types. So let's see where you can get these advantages from. Advantages will always show an up arrow, so here's a magic advantage on one of our Scion's virtues. You may also acquire cards, like this one, that provide you with advantages. This amulet gives you 2 wild advantages when you're in a lake space, while this scroll can be spent, which means you discard it, to give you 4 stealth advantages. Advantages can be divided into 2 different types: automatic, like the amulet here, which have a black background, and conditional, like the scroll, which has a gray background. To use a conditional advantage, you have to spend it. That means you discard it. And since this is a treasure, it would go to the bottom of the treasure deck. But in the process of doing this, you gain its advantages to use at any time during this battle. On the other hand, when you use an automatic advantage like this amulet, you don't lose it. You can only use each automatic advantage you have once per battle. But when you take a battle action in the future, you'll have this advantage to use again. When you're ready to use an advantage like this circlet of conviction, first ensure its type matches one of the traits of your target. These traits will be shown in the app and on the foe's card. So these brigands can have humanoid and stealth advantages used against them. This circlet has the humanoid advantage, so I can use it by tapping the foe's current card in this area. But before I do, keep an eye on these 2 areas. All right, let's tap. Notice one of the dots by the sun disappeared, but also the effect on the card just got weaker. We no longer have to lose a potion at all. That said, if I have other advantages that match either of the foe's traits, I could use those as well and weaken the enemy even more. For example, I could spend this treasure to gain 4 stealth advantages to use at any point during this battle. So I could use one of my 4 just gained stealth advantages to tap here again. And things got even better. I actually gained 3 warriors for facing this card now. And once you see only 1 dot left on the sun icon, you know that card is at its weakest. It can't be weakened any further. I should mention, you don't have to spend all of the advantages that you have on the card you're currently resolving in the app. Maybe you'll spend some on one foe card and then save some for a future card you'll face during that fight. However, any advantages you have but don't spend by the end of that battle action are lost. So if I had tossed out this treasure in order to get 4 stealth actions, but I only used 2 of them, well, the other 2 are lost. I don't get to save those for a future battle. Also, if you gain an item during a battle and it provides you with an advantage, you can then use it during that battle action. But if you lose an item in the middle of a battle that had provided you with automatic advantages, that item goes away, but you can still use the advantage that was on it during that battle. Each time you spend an advantage, the app will keep track of it here, and at most you can spend 10 during a single battle. Either way, once you've resolved the current card, tap the confirm button, and if that was the final foe card you had to deal with, you'll now be told to remove that foe's token from your space. Sometimes an effect in the app or on a card like this one will let you remove a foe without battling it. When this happens, tap this button in the app to see a listing of all the monsters currently in play. From here, you can then tell the app the one that you want to remove by holding down the related button for it. After that, you can then remove the related token from the board. And that's how you resolve a battle as your heroic action for the turn. But instead of cleansing or battling, you have one other heroic action you may instead perform: questing. There are 2 ways to quest. One is to be in a space with a quest marker when you satisfy its requirements. You can always see the requirements of a quest by tapping on it here. And if you're in the required space and satisfy its requirements, hold down this button until it changes color and read out the results, resolving any outcomes it provides. The main goal is resolved the same way, and completing this puts you on the path to winning the game. So it's ultimately what you and the other players should be focused on completing. But we'll discuss what happens when this is completed a little later. In addition to completing a quest with the questing action, you can also use this action to explore a dungeon. Dungeons will be added by the app to the board, and it will tell you what type of dungeon it is and where to place it. You then find the related token and add it to that space. From now on, while you're in a space with a dungeon token, you can explore it as your quest action. This dungeon icon will be available for you to tap, and then you can pick the dungeon pictured on the token in your space. You'll now see the starting room of that dungeon and any unexplored rooms you can enter from it. So now we'll pick one of these rooms that we'd like to explore. The app will then reveal what happens next. Often you're faced with a requirement and may then use at most 1 valid advantage you haven't used yet during this quest action by pressing the Improve button to improve the room. Now, whether or not you used an advantage, follow the presented instructions to resolve that room. Like a battle, if you cannot fully resolve the requirements, do what you can and then gain a corruption. But either way, the room is then cleared and you can decide whether or not to explore a new room or just leave the dungeon. Somewhere hidden in each dungeon is a target room, which contains a hidden object or important person you're trying to find. And as soon as you find that room, you've completed the dungeon and will be told what happens. And then the dungeon token will be removed from the board. Now, if you leave the dungeon before finding the target room, any rooms you did clear will remain cleared for the next time any hero explores that dungeon. And those are all of the possible hero actions. And again, you pick only one of them to perform on your turn, or none of them. But if you perform a heroic action, as you're reminded here, you then gain 2 spirit. Now, in addition to moving and performing a heroic action, you may also perform one of the 4 types of reinforce actions. So let's see how these work next. To perform a reinforce action, you must be in a space with a building, and then depending on the type of building it is, a reinforce action allows you to perform one of 2 possible effects. All of these effects are shown on your hero board beside the related building. And each of these buildings has one effect that is free to perform, and the other will have a cost. When reinforcing, you pick just one of these effects to perform. So for example, at the Citadel, one of the options is to gain 1 potion for free. When you gain a potion, draw the top card from this potions deck and place it face up in front of you. There's no limit to how many potions you can have, and each one will provide some kind of effect that you can resolve when you spend the potion, which will send it back to the bottom of its deck. And I should mention, anything you have that can be spent, you can spend at any point during your turn. So keep an eye out for items you have that could help you. Going back to the reinforce actions, you can see here, while at the Citadel, you can instead spend 5 spirit to gain 1 virtue. This allows you to flip any one of your inactive virtues to its active side, giving you access to its effect right away. And remember, the main goal for this scenario is to have 5 of your virtues unlocked. So now I only have 1 more to go. If you're at the Sanctuary, you can reinforce to either gain 1 spirit for free, or spend 5 spirit to remove all the corruption cards you currently have. Any corruption that you lose is returned to the bottom of the corruption deck in any order that you want. At the village, you can reinforce to gain 6 warriors for free, or spend 1 spirit to gain 12 of them. There's no limit to how many warriors or spirit tokens a player can collect, and if the supply would ever run out, just use a suitable replacement. While at the bazaar, you can reinforce to gain 1 piece of gear for free. Gear you collect from any one of the face-up piles in the supply, but each player can have, at most, only 1 copy of each type of gear. Gear, like potions, will provide you with a benefit, but these are ongoing. You don't lose the gear card when you use its benefits. At the bazaar, if you reinforce and instead spend 2 spirit, you can gain 1 treasure. When collecting treasure, choose a face-up one from this area known as the market, and anytime a treasure leaves the market, replace it with a new one from the top of the deck. Treasures you gain, you add to an open space below your hero board here, and you can have at most 4 treasures at any one time. So if you would ever gain more than that, discard any extras to the bottom of the treasure deck until you're back down to 4. We saw examples of treasures earlier, and these will have various benefits. Some are ongoing, and others require you to spend the treasure to use its effect. One of the objectives in the scenario we're playing here is for a player to collect 4 of Asgol's treasures, and these are any that show that name in their title. And those are all of the possible ways to reinforce. However, before you perform a reinforce action, you can choose, if you wish, to roll this Haggle Die. If you get a blank side, nothing extra happens and you resolve the action as normal. But if you get this side, your reinforce action is canceled and you won't get to perform it at all. If you get any of the other sides, then after the reinforce action, you also get a bonus. This side means you get 3 warriors. Here, you'd gain 1 potion, and with this side, you collect 1 piece of gear. And that's everything you need to know to resolve the middle of your turn, where you can move and take 1 heroic and 1 reinforce action in any order, breaking up your move to perform actions as you like. Additionally, at any point during the start or middle of your turn, you can make trades. A trade can happen between you and any one other hero in your space as long as you both agree to the trade. You can't trade virtues or corruption, but you can give or take warrior or spirit tokens, any types of items, or companions. We haven't discussed companions yet, but the first player started with this one, and companions provide you with additional abilities. For example, this one says that once per turn we can spend a treasure we're holding, which just means that we discard it, ignoring any effects on the treasure itself, but then the companion grants us 3 wild advantages. Alright, with the middle of a player's turn complete, they now move to the end of their turn, collecting 1 skull from the supply and dropping it into the top of the tower. You'll see an opening here to drop the skull into, but before I do, let me just prepare you for what might happen. The skull that you add might drop out one of the open doors in the tower, or it may disappear into the tower. Levels of the tower might rotate, you might see lights and hear sounds. In a later turn, skulls you have dropped in previously might suddenly appear and spill out onto the board, and I'll explain some of those outcomes in a moment, but the important thing to understand is this. At the end of your turn, you must add a skull to the tower. And if you don't have any skulls left in the supply to drop into the tower, then the players all lose. This is why it's important to use the cleanse action to remove skulls from the buildings, sending them back to the supply. Also, as soon as you drop a skull into the tower, you can no longer use any of your items, even ones that would deal with skulls or events. It's the tower's turn to act now. Let's say after adding a skull to the tower, a skull drops out. A A skull leaving the tower must then be placed in a building located in the kingdom where the skull exited the tower from. So if a skull had come out of this door but tumbled and rolled into this kingdom, we would still bring it back and add it to a building in this one, since this is the kingdom facing where the skull exited from. When a skull enters a kingdom, the player who is seated by that kingdom decides which building to put the skull in. If you have less than 4 players like we do here, any kingdom that doesn't have a player seated by it is known as a dormant kingdom. Skulls that enter a dormant kingdom still go into one of the buildings there, but the player who dropped the skull into the tower decides which one it's added to. If a building would ever receive its 4th skull, it's destroyed. You remove the building and the 3 skulls on it from the game. Don't put them back in the supply. And the 4th skull that destroyed it is then returned to the supply. If a player loses a building in their home kingdom, they gain a corruption. But if a building is destroyed in a dormant kingdom, then no one gains a corruption. And remember, if a player would ever have 3 corruption at once, all the players lose. Now, in addition to dropping a skull and resolving whatever might happen as a result, the app might indicate that an event needs to resolve at the end of your turn as well. These will show this event icon, and you should read the event out loud with the player who dropped the skull into the tower resolving any choices that need to be made. Events may do any number of things, like add, move, or attack with foes, or the foes on the board may grow in power. The tower itself might rotate or act in some way, or maybe, if you're lucky, something good might happen. It's often during events that companions you've collected will act and provide you with some benefit. So the more companions you have, the better. Sometimes an event will instruct you to remove a seal. When this happens, the lights on either side of the related side will glow, and the specific seal will pulse a glowing red. You then apply some light pressure to the related seal and slide it upwards. This will either reveal an opening, like we see here, or a glyph symbol. If it's an opening, it's possible that skulls might have been hiding behind the seal, so once it's removed, they'll spill out. And if so, you place those skulls following the normal rules. If instead a removed seal reveals a glyph, it will match one of the symbols found on your player board, representing that type of action. No matter which kingdom your character is currently standing in, if a revealed glyph is facing your kingdom, then to take the related action, you will have to spend 1 spirit token. Okay, with that understood, after any events have been resolved, the next player in clockwise order takes their turn. And turns will continue like this until the players all win or lose. Remember, you lose if any player would have 3 corruption at once, or if you ever need to take a skull from the supply for any reason and there are none left there, or if the 6th month ends. To win, you must defeat the adversary before any of those things happen. To do this, complete the main goal by satisfying its requirements. In this scenario, a player needs to have 4 of Asgul's treasures and have unlocked 5 of their virtues. Then, if they're in the space with the main goal marker, they can press down on the Hold to Complete button until it fully changes color. They will then be presented with some story to read out loud and discover that the adversary has emerged from the tower. You'll show their location by putting the adversary's foe token onto the indicated space of the board as shown in the app. From now on, you'll be able to start a battle with the adversary just as you would any other foe by going to their space and tapping on the battle action icon in the app and selecting the adversary. But during the battle, there are 2 key differences. First, after resolving at least one of the adversary's battle cards, you will then be given the option to retreat before facing more cards. So this lets you go in, fight the adversary a little, and then leave before you're overwhelmed, but the app will remember the progress you've made against the adversary so far. Also, anytime you use an advantage to adjust the effect on a card the adversary has revealed against you, the change you make to that card will persist in future battles. So if we used 2 advantages against this adversary card, then in the future, when this card is revealed from the deck again, it will still be at this reduced level. In this way, you can weaken the future effects you or the other players will face when you battle the adversary later. And you'll likely have to battle the adversary several times before the app tells you that you've landed the final blow. Once you have, the app will inform you that the adversary is defeated and the players have all won. Instead of playing cooperatively, you can also play Return to Dark Tower competitively, with players racing to be the first to retrieve a relic hidden within a tower dungeon. You'll find these rules detailed here in the rulebook, but I'll leave those for you to discover on your own. You'll also find a page here explaining some of the other tokens in the game for when they come up, like these River of Fire tokens, so refer to this area if you have any questions about them. I should also mention the app automatically saves your game after every turn, so if you need to change the batteries in the tower, or you have to pause the game, you can stop, and the next time you open the app, you'll see an option to continue your last game. And remember, each time you play, you can pick different adversaries and different combinations of foes to ensure a unique experience every time. But otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Return to Dark Tower. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.